Welcome back to the Real News Network. Joined again by William Engdahl, coming from Frankfurt, Germany. He has a new book coming out this summer called The Power of Money, The Rise and Fall of the American Century. He's an economist and a writer. Thanks for joining us, William.
Thank you, Paul.
So in the first part of our first segment of our interview, we talked about your sense that Obama has missed an important opportunity by not taking on the banking system, the cabal of bankers, as you described them. Talk a bit about what you think of the stimulus package. Billions and billions of dollars to pay for state infrastructure projects, cities, a certain amount of green investment, highway development, broadband development. A lot of money, a great deal of money going to go into the healthcare system. Are these positive signs to you or not?
Well, it's a very mixed bag as I have been able to sort through it. I think anything that goes to investment in public infrastructure to make the highway grid, the rail grid, the basic infrastructure of the economy, to bring that up to speed is positive investment. It's money that will pay back manifold in terms of increased economic activity down the line. That being said, much of what I see in the program is utter waste. For example, the carbon credits for global warming. Well, global warming, I don't want to get into an extensive thing, but this is a problem that is really a non-existent problem. It's been hyped up by certain vested interests that want to push that, but that's not going to help the economy.
Well, as you said, that's a very controversial debate, that one, and I think, I mean, that would require a whole other show to get into the climate change debate.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But the expenditure in infrastructure that you see, is it the right direction? There's been some critique that the package simply isn't big enough, that it should probably be double the size it is. What do you make of that?
Well, it's infinitesimal compared to the National Society of Construction Engineers made a recent assessment of a $2.2 trillion national infrastructure deficit to bring the economy up to par. Bridges that are crumbling, for example, between the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, the one that collapsed and several people died. That kind of thing is evident all over the country, but the money's just not being spent to bring that up to speed. But $100 billion or $150 billion is really a drop in the bucket compared to the scale of the problem. The problem is large industry has walked away from investment in America over the last 30 years. They've outsourced, they've gone to Asia, they've gone to cheap labor places around the world and avoided those expenses at home. And now the chickens have come home to roost, and we have to face the consequences of that. So it doesn't go anywhere near enough to address that real problem.
Well, if you combine the economic issues with the foreign policy issues, there's a lot of chickens coming home. But
yeah.
But that being said, there's one way or the other, there's going to be trillions of dollars of expenditure on the stimulus side,
Yeah.
Hundreds of billions of dollars on the banking side. In the final analysis, how concerned are you about the resulting debt? I mean, who pays for all this? And at some point, is there such an inflationary effect on the U.S. dollar that this whole thing starts to spiral out of control anyway?
Within a few months, we run the risk of real hyperinflation, the kind you had in Germany in the 20s, the kind you've had in Russia in the 90s, or in countries like Argentina, Ecuador, and so forth, where inflation is so out of control that you have to recalibrate the price of the menu at the beginning of the meal to the end of the meal for your customers at a restaurant. So that is a real danger.
Is this a sort of a stagflation then, where the economy is in malaise at the same time the dollar is so inflated that, is it really a profound stagflation you're talking about?
No, this is not stagnation of the economy and the kind of inflation we had in the 70s. I'm talking about 200% per year inflation rates as a real possibility, not 6, 7, 8% or 10% inflation.
How would Obama avoid this if you were advising him?
Well, the more investment that's put in, first of all, you've got to bring these banks under control. Until those banks are under control, it's more or less unavoidable, because the Federal Reserve is not going to want snuff those banks out just when they're starting to lend again. So they're going to err on the side of being too lax. And that's what's going to lead to this kind of hyperinflation danger. But the banking system has to be brought under control, under a firm grip of the federal government, accountable ultimately to the population that elects the members of Congress and the executive branch. And until that's done, you're just leveraging a disaster into a black hole.
Well, some people have suggested another course as well, which is that instead of just printing money or borrowing money, it's not that there isn't a lot of wealth in the United States. Some people have advocated a special wealth tax for some time to pay for all of this. What do you make of that?
I come back to the thing I've said all evening, until you address the fundamental problem of a sick banking system.
No, but would you do this in combination?
Fundamentally dysfunctional banking system.
Right.
No amount of taxation is going to improve the fundamentals of the economy.
But is some kind of wealth tax a necessary component that would go along with banking reform?
There was a coup d'etat in 1979 when the moneyed class, or the moneyed interest in the nation, really got control of the situation to their advantage. Paul Volcker was brought in on the behest of David Rockefeller to become chairman of the Federal Reserve. He jacked up interest rates into the double digits and held them there until 1982, approximately August of 1982, or October in that time period. And through that squeezing, he shifted the wealth of the nation from a large population to the top 1% or the top 10% of the country. And since then, every president from Ronald Reagan down through both of the Bushes, and including Clinton, have kept that shift of the wealth into the hands of a smaller and smaller minority. So a tax that would redress that imbalance and bring the distribution of income back towards some kind of norm such as we had in the 1950s would, I think, socially be all to the good. I don't think that's going to be the source of solving all these problems, but certainly to redress that imbalance is of vital importance.
And to what extent is the issue of wages, real purchasing power, an important question here?
It's a major issue. If you go back 20 years, in terms of real purchasing power, the wage level or the income level of most Americans has gone down and not up. It's only the top 5 to 10% who had this huge gain in their wealth factor through the tax cuts of the Bush administration, both Bushes, and various other measures since the time of Ronald Reagan. So you've had this huge shift of wealth to the top 10%, and the remaining 90% have had a decrease in their standard of living in real terms. And that, to get that redressed, is a major part of any long-term recovery plan.
Thanks very much for joining us, William.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.
Donate today and receive a new documentary film available to members of the Real News Network. The History of the National Security State with legendary author Gore Vidal. Bonus features of the DVD include an in-depth response to Vidal from ex-CIA analyst Ray McGovern, who served under 7 U.S. presidents, an exclusive interview with Colin Powell's former Chief of Staff Larry Wilkerson, and an insightful interview with oil policy analyst Antonia Juhas.
The news magazine of the screen. Living glimpses of history in the making.
Hollywood and Washington is a symbiotic relationship. They both deal with illusions. Reality doesn't often play much of a part. I think I saw through the myth of the Cold War almost from the beginning. I was a Washington political kid from a political family. Roosevelt first had radio because he had this great speaking voice and everyone liked to hear. Truman proceeded to break every arrangement that Roosevelt had set up for a peaceful coexistence. And Truman thought that it would be a good idea. Why not just stay armed all the time? And then he devised the national security state. You've got to go up and swear allegiance to the United States or else you're a commie. I mean, we had imported fascism. We get Dwight Eisenhower, who said that we have this great military industrial complex. It is a dangerous thing. And he said this is going to change everything. And the way our country's governed is going to change us politically. Along comes Jack Kennedy, who wanted to make his mark, believed in the Cold War. But he said, in this kind of politics, it is the appearance of things that matters. I think everybody should take a sober look at the world about us. The national security state still exists, only it isn't communism anymore, it's terrorism. This is the most serious thing that has happened in the history of the United States. Knowledge is power. We need an honest news system.
We need the real news.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics. And that's why we need you.
Make a tax-deductible donation now of at least $10 a month or a one-time give of at least $75. As a thank you for your support, we will send you the new documentary film, The History of the National Security State.